Hey, hi everyone. A very good evening to all of you. So, as you all might be aware that today I'll be taking a session covering that how or what are the non-technical components when you go into an interview round, right? And before we start the topic, I'll give you a very brief background about what I have done till now, right? So, I have graduated from IIT Kanpur in 2015, after which I worked with American Express for 1 year, and after that I went for my MBA from IIM Calcutta, and I graduated in 2018. In the last 2 years, I've worked in management consulting across different sectors, ranging from infrastructure, aviation, technology, agri-tech, industrial goods, etc. Right? And so this is a brief background about myself, and what I want to tell you in the very beginning is about what to expect from this session, right? In this session today, I'll be covering about what are the non-technical components which are useful for a candidate who is appearing for the interview. Now, I'll just take an example, right? So suppose if you are applying to a company like American Express, right? They would definitely expect the technical nuance from your end, that you should know so and so things, and you should know how to use SQL, how to code a little bit, right? Whatever their core technical skills they want to evaluate you on. Apart from that, there's a whole other dimension which talks about different kinds of questions, different kind of sessions where they want to get to know you better, right? And there are so many things apart from the technical expertise which a company would evaluate you on. And that is very, very critical for a company as well, because they want to be really sure that this guy might be technically competent. He or she might not fit in the company culture, or he or she might not like the kind of work we do, or the kind of industry this is, or the expectations are misaligned, right? So that is a very, very critical and crucial part which one has to always look into, right? So today we are going to talk about the second bit, the latter bit, which I discussed, right? So let's just get started. Right. So as I was telling you, right, that technical part is important, is required, and it's some must-have thing in order to get an offer from a company. But additionally, the non-technical aspect, which contains multiple sub-verticals, which a candidate has to go through in order to ensure that they get a they get an offer from the company, right? So today there are two components, as I was telling you. One is your technical component, other is your non-technical component. In the non-technical component, which we'll be covering today in this section, right? So I can think of the non-technical component in four different buckets, right? So one is your typical CV-based questioning, which different companies or which different HR teams actually do or conduct in order to know you more, in order to see what you have been doing, right? And apart from the CV based bucket, there's your soft skill or behavioral assessment questions. I'll come to examples as well, right? This is just to give you an overall picture of what to expect, right? Or how I am going to present all these learnings and suggestions to you guys, right? So second is your typical HR type of questions. It can be based on what kind of how would you behave in a particular situation, how do you see different things happening around you, right? Then third is your company specific thing. This is very very critical, and if somebody is not coming out, culturally fit, a company generally doesn't go ahead with hiring that candidate. It's kind of a very critical, important point, and I mean, from my experience, when I was as young as you guys are right now, right? I myself remember that we used to focus while preparing only on the technical component part, right? We used to do puzzles, we used to do case studies, we used to do or brush up our programming skills depending upon role or profile for which we are applying for, right? And we used to little bit research about the company, what the company is doing and how is it performing in the current scenario, right? And that is how it used to be there, like to begin with, right? And we used to think that okay, CV is what I have made, I'll answer all the questions, right? And behavioral assessment, we never used to think in that much depth, right? And so yeah, so what I'm trying to convey over here is that you should not take your non-technical component lightly, because it is as critical as your technical component, and at times more critical. Yeah, sorry guys, I kind of my internet over here is a little bad due to a lot of rains which are happening in my region, right? So, what I was saying was that it's very, very important for all of you to kind of treat the non-technical component of your interview process as seriously as you treat your technical component, right? And having said that, what I'll do is I'll directly delve deeper into all these four different sub verticals, which I have chalked down right now for you. And just to give you a time sense, this material will take me roughly 30 to 35 minutes, right? And I'll keep like 20 minutes for you folks to come up with your questions, anything specific in nature, or if you feel that there's something which I could have covered or you want me to talk about, I'll love to take that up, right? So that is how we are going to go ahead with that. If in case you have any questions in between the session, right, feel free to add it in the comment section, and I'll take all the questions towards the end once the session is over from my end, right? So moving forward, right? So this is the first component, right? And I mean, before getting into the first component, just one more additional info nugget which I wanted to give is that the current times which are where we are right now, right? COVID-19 has affected a lot many job opportunities, internship opportunities, and it's very, very challenging for many people out there, right? So I do believe that many of you would be considering, off-campus placements as well, because maybe the amount of opportunity you generally get would not be available in this year, you owing to the breakout of COVID-19. Having said that, I wanted to kind of, share one information or one critical bit around the off-campus placement, and that is that generally one shares their CV, and once that is done, a very first screening round is kind of conducted, where someone from the company where you're applying will talk to you. They'll try to know a bit more about you. They'll try to understand that what you have been up to, right? And basis that they'll tell you that okay, now we have gotten a great idea about your profile. So once that part is done, depending upon you clear the filter or not, they'll take your profile ahead. So just to illustrate, suppose you apply to company A with your CV. If your CV gets shortlisted, somebody from the hiring committee would give you a call and will try to know a bit more about you. They'll try to understand why are you considering an opportunity in their company, They'll try to understand what is motivating you, what do you eventually want to do. So they would try to understand your intention, your motivation, your aspirations behind it, and basis that discussion. So your CV is first part of your overall profile, and second is this conversation which they will have if your CV gets shortlisted. After the whole thing kind of makes sense to them, then only they'll move ahead, right? So this is the second biggest filter which kind of takes place in the current environment. Uh, Generally, it used to always take place in the off-campus placement market, and since many of the folks who are there in campuses would be kind of venturing into the off-campus arena as well, I thought it is important for me to emphasize the fact that your non-technical part or non-technical component of your overall preparation is very, very, very crucial, right? So I think I have made my point pretty clear in terms of that. And having said that, let's try to move ahead, right? So the first component which I mentioned was your CV based questions, right? And these kind of questions are generally asked to know you better, to understand what you have been up to, how you are doing things, to understand your thought process. How do you kind of, uh, performed in the past, what kind of issues or challenges you have bumped into, and how you have dealt with that. So, CV based questions are very common, and I'm very sure that many of you might already be aware of that, right? And there are some questions which I thought I'll, kind of pick up in terms of, discussing and mentioning how these questions are. To be honest, I cannot answer these questions for you. These questions are very, very individualistic in nature. The reason or the answer, the correct answer for me would definitely not be a correct answer for you, right? So it's very important that enough amount of time and bandwidth is given to this complete section, developing your answers. This is not something which you can take from your friend, asking that, okay, what have you prepared? I'll just give me the answer to that and I'll move ahead with that. So it's very, very important to kind of spend time and develop the answer for these questions, right? So the very first question, and which is like the question which is almost asked every time to every candidate, and which is give me a brief overview of your profile, right? And depending upon what kind of context is there in that discussion, in that interview, you should try to give your answer, right? Your answer generally should be between 30 seconds to 1 minute, depending upon the situation, right? And upon how the other person is reacting to while you're sharing the details with them. If you think they are getting kind of bored or they are losing interest, try to keep it short. If you think they are taking interest and they are very they are feeling good to know you more, they are looking I mean they are looking they are hearing actively, right? They are listening actively, then you should keep going on and kind of share everything of your profile in that answer. One thing which I would like to mention over here is the fact that this is the question which kind of gives the ball in your court for some time. Depending upon how good or how bad you answer this question, the rest of the interview will take place. If you are able to put all your strengths, right, all the points which kind of differentiate you, or all the points which kind of make you a good fit for the company, right? If you're able to put those points over here, it will be a great interview for you from the angle that the kind of impression which the interviewer will form would be very positive. And from there, I mean, it would be in your favor if you take it properly over the next question, right? So this part is very, very important. This question is the most important question one should prepare for. You should make notes. Maybe you should write it out. You should ensure that you are able to capture all your strengths and relevant experience while talking to the interviewer, right? So this is a very, very important question, and everybody should prepare for it, right? Moving on. Another question like, what have you done in college apart from academics? Now, most of the questions over here are very profile specific, right? So if somebody is having a very high CGPA, right? If somebody has a CGPA of 9.5 on a scale of 10, right? So one thing is pretty clear that they are very good at academics. The other thing which interviewer would like to understand is key apart from this, what else have they done? Or are they into anything else apart from academics? And generally this is when a question like what have you done in college apart from academics is asked, right? Moving on to the other end, right? There are people uh, who do not have that high a CGPA or maybe a low CGPA, right? And people or interviewer would definitely ask that why is your CGPA or why is your CPI so low? And do not think that your low CPI or low CGPA is a bad thing once you have entered into the interview room, right? If they are asking you this question, it is not to insult you, but it is to understand from your perspective that what were the challenges or what else you were doing, which kind of made you focus on the other things than academics. So it's very important to have a great answer around this for people, especially who have low CGPA. And if you're able to kind of justify that these are the three different activities I've done, this is a tournament where I have played at a national level, or I have represented India over here, or I used to do competitive programming and on code chef, I have so and so rating, so and so ranking. So depending upon that, how well you are able to justify that, it would make a lot of sense for the interviewer, right? If you are able to kind of justify what you were involved into because of which your CGPA was low, well and good. Otherwise, it will go negatively for you, right? So this is there. Apart from that, generally, when I have to personally grill someone on their CV, I would like to understand their projects or internships or research paper or whatever they have done academically, right? And the reason behind that is, firstly, it gives me a sense of what they have done, right? And how they have done it. Plus, what is the magnitude of what the candidate has been working on, right? Generally, I mean, in the CV, people capture a lot many things. While it makes sense to, kind of read it and make sense out of it, many a times CVs are very, very technical in nature. And in my one-on-ones with so many students I've been having of late, I try to tell them that please ensure that you are able to convey your points in a very understandable manner. And having said that, as an interviewer, generally they would ask what project you have worked on or what are the challenges you face, right? So these are the kind of things one would like to understand. And again, the list is endless, right? But these are some top of my mind. These are the questions I generally tend to ask candidates when I interview them, right? Then moving on, other bit which is right, which is like tell me something about yourself, which is not mentioned in your CV, right? And you should definitely have something ready for this. It can be a hobby, it can be something new which you have been doing, right? It can be anything. It should be interesting. I mean, do not bore with something extremely out of box and disconnecting, right? Try to have some interesting answers so that the interviewer kind of answer questions again on that, and you are able to capture his attention, his or her attention on your additional aspects as well, right? And as I have said, the list is endless. uh, there can be more questions apart from the ones I've shared. This is definitely non-exhaustive in nature. I cannot sum up all the questions because there are so many of them, right? So this is the vertical first vertical, which is the CV based questions, and they are very, very important, and this would definitely take place in the non-technical bit of a resume. Generally, it might take place in all the interviews which you are appearing for, whether technical or non-technical, and interviewers will spend 10 to 15 to 20 minutes depending upon how much they want to deep dive into your profile, right? The kind of learning or the kind of understanding the interviewer wants to develop over here is to really understand about you, about your candidature, and how what kind of skills you possess, right? So ensure that you are able to capture your strengths very well in your answers. That is the key point which everyone should take away. Moving on to the second part, and this is something which is kind of gaining traction across multiple firms, especially startups, right? And this basically is your behavioral assessment or behavioral understanding. And these questions basically are more common to a startup kind of a place, because a startup is a very fast moving animal, right? And if somebody is considering you for a role in their own startup, they would really want to know how you behave in certain situations, right? So this vertical is extremely critical for people who are going to apply or explore opportunities in the startup domain. It's very critical, right? And this is basically done for two reasons. Firstly, as I've told you, the founder or the founding team would like to really understand how you are as a person. That is one. And second is, most of these startups are doing something entirely new. So if you are working, or if you are not even working, whatever you are up to, even if you're in college or if you're working in a well established company, chances are high that the startup you are going to interview with is solving a new problem altogether. So whatever experience you have had would not be directly useful for the startup, right? The learnings would be definitely. I mean, somebody would learn how to manage different stakeholders, or somebody would learn how to make a financial model, or somebody would learn how to conduct extensive uh, secondary research, right? So these things are important, but any direct correlation would be missing, generally speaking, very generally speaking. So doing a behavioral assessment of a candidate would give the interviewer a very fine understanding about how the candidate would fit from their firm's value perspective, right? And different kind of questions are asked over here. Again, the kind of questions, number of questions over here are almost infinite in nature, right? I have tried to capture a few from different phase, different phases, right? So one is, what would you do if your manager asks you to do one thing while you feel that doing something else would add more value, right? So if you have a conflict with your manager, right, or any difference in opinion towards how to solve a problem, how to deal with it, how are you going to react? What are you going to do, right? And again, there is no ideal answer over here. Right? I mean, there are definitely some non-ideal answers. Like, you're not going to fight with your manager uh, to the very end to kind of put your point. I mean, that is definitely a wrong answer. But apart from that, there is no right answer. It depends from person to person. It depends. Different people handle situations differently, and there is no right fit, right? Somebody would like to discuss it one on one, try to put their points across, and try to convince the manager to look at the other angle as well, right? While that is a right solution for a company where that much amount of time and bandwidth is there, it might be a wrong answer for a company where everything is on fire all the time, right? Maybe over there it's very important that you are able to capture, or you are able to share your views in a very crisp manner within like 1 minute. You just have 1 minute to convince your manager ki boss, this is how it is, and I feel so and so because of reasons 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So there's no right answer. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You should try to think about it, and you should try to see how you generally deal with situations like these and share that with the interview, right? Moving on. So tell me about a time when you effectively worked under high pressure. Again, a very good question to get an understanding from you. And for these kind of questions, I generally prefer if the candidate is capturing or structuring their answer using STAR technique, STAR. right? Where S stands for the situation, right? The candidate should first tell what the situation was, followed by T. T is task. So eventually, in that situation, what your task was, right? Followed by A. A is action. What are the things you did? What action you took? And R. R is the result. What was the end result? I would definitely love to see some amount of metric over there to understand that okay, these are the three, four things, how you track your results or how you see your impact being delivered, right? So that is there. Then how do you handle conflicts with your co-workers in a team, right? Again, it's similar to question one, right? But there would be uh, some some additional challenges because there might be many projects on which you're working together and there are conflicts in few, others are going smoothly. Depends from case to case, right? And moving on, tell me about the biggest hurdle of your life and how did you deal with that, right? Again, this is just to get a sense of how you think in your head, how you see different problems, how you see different challenges, how you kind of assess them, and how are you able to break down those big problems or the bigger problem into smaller problems, and how do you address them, right? So that is what overall the company or the interviewer would like to understand and like to know about you, right? So yeah, so this is the second vertical, and I personally feel that this is more common to a startup kind of a place. Having said that, I do not mean to say that an established player wouldn't ask this. They would definitely ask you in some form and shape, but in a startup, this definitely is asked because it's very, very important that you are they are able to kind of put that faith in you, right? And for that, such kind of questions are definitely asked and discussed. Moving on, right? So this is the third bit, and which is like a make or a break kind of a thing because no matter how well you have performed, how good you are, how motivational, how inspirational, how aspiring you are as a candidate, no matter what that is, no matter what your qualifications are, in the end, if the company is going ahead with the reason of hiring you, they want to be pretty convinced that hiring you would make or would add a lot of value to the firm in the long race, right? They would definitely want, they would definitely not want someone who is going to be with them and uh, uh, the person eventually might realize that okay, this is not exactly what I wanted to do, so I'll go somewhere else, right? Or they do not want people who are not going to enjoy the kind of work which is there in that profile, in that role, right? So it's very, very important that the company really wants to make sure that as a candidate you would integrate well with the system, with the firm, with the people, and there is some kind of harmony which is present in the team when you are around, right? And in order to kind of explore all those angles, in order to understand, in order to be really sure of you as a candidate, various different questions are asked, and the most simple or the most common one is why us, right? Whatever company you are interviewing with, they'll definitely ask, why do you come to us? Why do you want to work with us? What is the reason behind it, right? Why not that other firm? Why not our competitor? And it's a very, very common answer. And definitely for such a question, you definitely need to spend some time to read about the firm to make sure that you understand what that firm is going to provide you with. And it's a very good habit to kind of talk to a few people in that company, few alums, right? Few seniors who can guide you, and get a sense from them. That conversation would give you a lot of understanding of what exactly the firm looks out for, or what kind of environment is there in that firm, right? What kind of ownership is there, what kind of growth is there. So a company would definitely love if you're going to spend some time on your own research and come up with very specific pointers saying that, okay, I have talked to a couple of my seniors or my alums in your organization, and I have gotten to know that the level of ownership is very, very high. And I personally would like to explore a role where the ownership is high, so that I can add a lot of value, I can learn a lot, right? Or maybe, I mean, it can be anything. It depends from company to company. You'll have to do that research and you'll have to prepare a good answer for that, right? Then different companies generally try to assess you on their own value system, their own principles or thought processes. They would definitely like to ensure that you would fit well with the firm, right? Otherwise, it would not be a great mix and match, of your talent with the company, with the employees who are there, right? So it's very, very important that you kind of do your research and you're able to put forward with that, right? Then some other common questions are there, which are like, what differentiates you from other candidates, right? Or why shall we hire you, right? Or a more aggressive way of putting that is, I don't think you are a cultural fit for us. Right? What do you have to say about it? Or do you also feel same? These are some other questions to kind of understand, to kind of get that sense of how you are as a candidate, and it's very, very important for that, right? So these are the questions which you should be very, very prepared with, because somewhere or the other these kind of questions will be asked while answering. While answering in an average manner to these questions would not hurt you, but if you answer it in a uh, bad fashion, or if your points do not add up or do not make any sense, it will definitely be a very uh, big dot on your candidature, right? And hence it's important that you kind of focus on these questions as well. I'll just use my earphone. Hello. I hope I'm better audible now. I just saw a few comments saying the voice level is varying. Yep. Right. So I was telling you that it's very, very important, very critical that you're very prepped with these questions, right? Why that company? What is the differentiating factor? And it will definitely give you an edge while you're going to interview with any company. Having said that, moving on to the last bucket, right? And this basically would cover a lot many things, right? It can be anything. It can go in any random direction. Maybe you have said reading books is your hobby, and the question might be, who is your favorite author, right? Or what kind of books do you read, or what was the last book you read, or what are the learnings from this particular book. It can be anything. I mean, it can go in any direction depending upon how you answer your questions in the very beginning, right? In the end, definitely, almost in all the interviews, the interviewer will ask you, do you have any questions for us? You should definitely have some questions for them, right? I mean, some good questions. I mean, you should not ask lame or irrelevant questions, right? But you should definitely prepare and try to see. I mean, if you are able to follow well with the interviewer in the process, they definitely introduce themselves, they share what they do in the firm. So it's good to ask questions around that. It will showcase that you are pretty interested in what they do and you're curious, right? So these are some good traits to exhibit in any interview. and it would definitely help you if you are able to kind of share your prepare well and kind of ask questions specific for that company, for that role, or maybe what the interviewer is up to. So it's a good thing to kind of cover that. And you should definitely not say I don't have any question for you, unless, I mean, you have already asked the questions and that part is already taken care of in the very beginning, right? Then, as I told you, generally, if there is any new development, news, or any movie which is kind of around your hobbies or around your interest, it's a very common practice to kind of ask such casual questions. So it kind of it's important to kind of cover these, prepare for these questions, while these questions would not be that impactful in your overall candidature. But if you are on the boundary line and you are able to answer these questions well, that kind of definitely increases the amount of trust the interviewer can put behind you. So that's a great thing, right? And depending upon your hobbies, or depending upon the discussion points, depending upon your thoughts, or depending upon your answers which you have shared in the interview, these questions can come up, right? So this is your typical miscellaneous bucket, which would differ from candidate to candidate, right? So these are the four important questions, right, which are there, and four different verticals which are there, and they should definitely be uh, covered well by the candidates. You should definitely spend a decent amount of time to kind of prepare these answers and be really sure of what you are answering, what how you are addressing these problems, right? So moving ahead, I mean, this is what I wanted to cover in principle for this session, and this I'm pretty sure this would have given you a very basic understanding of the non-technical component of the interview. And having said that, moving on, I take one-on-one sessions as well. So if you want to practice your interviews, if you want to kind of get a one-on-one with me, I am available, and you can book that course on the PrepLeaf portal, right? Wherein I'll be taking technical as well as non-technical interviews depending upon your profile and depending upon your ask, and definitely giving you a deeper understanding and some help, support, and guidance in preparing your answers as well, depending upon profile to profile, right? Right. So moving ahead, yeah. So I mean, that is all from my side in terms of what I wanted to cover for today, right? And before we get into the questions bit, I mean, you can all of you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I have shared the details over here. Right. So yeah, so that is all what I wanted to cover in this interview session for today from the non-technical bit. Right now, I'll be taking questions which you have had, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to ask in the chat box, and I'll answer, or I'll take these questions one by one. Right. So over to you guys. Right. So I'll start taking I'll start taking questions. So one question is how to answer if the manager is asking to do the work done by unfair means. What to do in this situation? You should definitely raise it up. I mean, it it's very important that ethicality is maintained. No company would ever ask anyone to do anything unethically, right? And I mean, it depends from person to person, but I mean, over here we definitely have the right answer. Doing anything by unethical means is unacceptable. So you should definitely discuss that with your manager. Maybe say that, okay, this is not something which I would do. Maybe you ask someone else to do this. If your manager is still pursuing you, then maybe talk to his manager, talk to other teammates. Definitely seek some help, right? Moving on, can we answer behavioral questions with personal situation as well? Yeah, so most of the times the behavioral questions are pretty personal in nature. They will ask you to come up with an example doing so and so, or they'll ask you what you would have done had you been in this situation, or they'll ask you some specific challenges from your personal life. So generally these are personal in nature most of the times, and definitely it's completely right to give examples from your personal situation as well. Definitely, these personal situations should be professional in nature. I mean, I would, if somebody has already been working for 2 years, I would not like to get their answer from an example in their college, right? If they have been working for 2 years, I would expect them to come up with an answer which, or an example which they have kind of conducted or they have done in their last 2 year of work. So I mean, so those are the pretty checks you should do. But yeah, definitely. What if they ask a question and we have half knowledge about it? Should we answer whatever we know or just be honest? Good question. So generally, okay. So this wouldn't completely fit with the non-technical aspect, right? Generally, this wouldn't fit with the non-technical aspect because these questions are very generic and no right answer is there. But yeah, if it's some technical question or if you really know half, if you know the answer to half of the question, you should be honest about it. I mean, uh, just take that assessment, just see how it's going to work on. If you think that giving the half answer would kind of suffice in this situation, go ahead with that. That depends upon your personal reading, right? But if you don't know something, be honest about it. Tell them that you don't know about this, or you are unaware of this, and if given a choice, you will read up and you will be prepared about that. Kind of gives the shows that you're honest and gives the assurance as well that you're willing to go that extra mile to cover that up. What questions being asked over branch? um the question isn't very clear, but assuming that this question is regarding your branch in your college, right? So it depends. I mean, somebody can ask you that you are a mechanical engineer. Why are you applying for an analytics firm, right? And these kind of questions are very very common, right? So you should definitely prepare for those kind of questions because they'll tell you that okay, you have worked in the mechanical field in like last 4 years of your college, right? Or maybe you have done your internship also over there. So it's very very important that you are able to kind of justify why you are looking out in a completely different field and how you will be relevant for that. So those are the kind of questions which generally get asked, and you should be able to answer that. Why did you leave your previous job tactfully? Okay. So some of the don'ts which are very very important is you should not bitch about your last firm or last manager, because that showcases that definitely those people could have been bad, but it definitely captures the fact that you kind of you are the person who kinds of puts a lot of blame on others. And while your while your potential interviewer wouldn't, a potential company, potential offer wouldn't be able to go and talk to your manager, they are definitely talking to you. So one of the biggest no is do not kind of put all the blame on the on the team, on the manager, on those things, right? Secondly, again, as I was telling you that there's no right answer over here. It depends from person to person, right? I have seen, so suppose somebody who is working in a very established organization, right? And after working there for several years,
they are kind of, they want to take up lunch, they want to, move into startup world to kind of explore challenging problems, right? So that can be one reason, right? Another reason can be that you want to learn, or you, I mean, depends from situation to situation, right? If you're moving to another industry, if you're moving to a startup, then what is your motivation, what is kind of guiding you? So those are the kind of things one should talk about. And as I have told you, right, a lot depends upon what your profile is, a lot depends on who your previous employer was, a lot depends who you are interviewing with, right? And depending upon how these different variables are changed, your answer has to change. There is no correct answer. Even for an individual, the question would have different answers in different situations, right? If I'm interviewing with a startup, I cannot tell them, okay, I'm looking for stability and I really want to chill. I do not want to work for more than 10 hours in a day. I mean, that is a wrong answer for that. However, if you are interviewing with a firm, I mean, this is kind of a wrong answer for all the firms, but if you're interviewing with a very established organization which kind of focuses on work life balance, it might be a good thing to say that, okay, I'm looking for stability and I would, really want to spend time and kind of ensure that I have that relevant work life balance. So it depends from situation to situation. Can you answer a dummy question? Why do you want to work in this firm, not our rivals? Okay, so I mean, you should compare the two firms across metric which would depend or which would matter to you. It can be anything. It can be ownership. It can be what role you are getting. It can be amount of responsibilities you would get. It would be the kind of skill set. It can be the peer group which you would have, right? It can be anything. I mean, it depends upon uh, what those two rivals are and what are the differences they have, right? And basis that you'll have to answer. So as you can see from how I'm addressing these questions, that it's very important to get hold of key 4 to 5 to 6 different factors, parameters in any question, and try to design your answer around that. Moving on, since this time we are going to give online interviews, would the dressing sense matter this time? Um, I mean, I don't think it should matter. At least the kind of firms I know, it wouldn't matter. But since most of you, or if you are appearing for, campus placements, it's important that you kind of put a shirt on, and it's okay if you don't put a tie on. But again, it depends from college to college. What are your guidelines? And if you're applying offline, I mean, if you're applying offline off campus, maybe ask the HR that what kind of dressing would be relevant. And most of the times, a t-shirt would do, a formal t-shirt would do, a collared t-shirt would do, right? So yeah. Moving ahead, how should we answer the question like what will you do if a hackathon is going on but a lot of work is pending? Uh, well, it depends. I mean, if the I mean, it depends what your first priority is. Whatever your first priority is, that should take care of. I mean, this would require some more context. What kind of work is there, right? If you are employed professionally, if you are engaged with a firm, directly you're working for them, and this hackathon is something which you're doing for your personal bit, then definitely uh, your professional work should take precedence depending upon situation to situation, right? Is it okay to cite things which are not mentioned in the resume? For example, I had done multiple interns out of which only one major intern is mentioned. Yeah, it's completely fine. That's okay. However, the question asked hypothetically could be answered better by citing the experience which is not written in the resume. Yeah, yeah. So it's completely fine if you are sharing your experience as long as you're not lying or not manipulating or not fudging details. It's completely fine. As long as you're truthful, it's completely fine to answer whether the point is there in your resume or not. That's completely fine. should we be a little bit honest and a little bit diplomatic while answering behavioral assessment questions, or fully diplomatic? uh, yeah, everybody's little bit honest and little bit diplomatic would differ, right? And while honesty should be there, it should not. I mean, while diplomacy should be there, it should not come at the cost of honesty. Uh, I don't know. I mean, maybe we should connect one on one to discuss this question better in the one on one session, and it would again depend from person to person. And you should maybe give me more context. You have written something because I have been quite frank about my past, especially my medical history, which affected my academics in my past intern interviews. But I think that they had a quite negative impact. Okay. Okay. So, right. So it depends from situation to situation, right? And if there's if there's something which is which is something of which you feel would not be taken positively, or which would be taken in a negative manner, so maybe do not share that till the time you are asked about that, right? And I think it would be better to discuss this offline, right? Because it's very specific to you, and I mean, I would like to know a bit more about you before giving you this answer. I have missed some question. Wait, let me check. Mm, yeah, Achyut, I can't find your question. If you can retype your question, that would be great. Apart from that, any more question, guys? Otherwise, we'll call it a day. Perfect. So it was great talking. I mean, it was great sharing my viewpoints on this, right? It was great talking to, it was great sharing my insights with you all. And you can definitely go ahead and book the sessions on the PrepLeaf portal if you want to take those sessions, right? And uh, also, apart from that, you feel free to kind of get in touch with me over LinkedIn, connect with me over LinkedIn. I shared my detail in the slide. Yeah, one last question. What should be ideal duration for tell me about yourself? Yeah, so as I told you, you should have like two answers. One should be your small 30-second bit, and one should be a bit longer, 1 minute, 1.5 minute kind of a thing, right? And depending upon situation to situation, you should answer that. In terms of details, uh, so you should try to start your answer capturing all the spikes, all the strengths you have in your profile, in order to kind of ensure that all your strong suits are kind of captured in the answer, right? So maybe you can mention about what are different kind of internships you have worked on, or what are the different jobs you have worked on, what were the major challenges over there. Depends, I mean, whatever you want to highlight more. If you think your academics are not that great, then maybe keep your answer around what you have done, and what you have what you have kind of achieved in doing that, what your learnings have been, what are your hobbies, or maybe talk about how things differentiate yourself. So back then, I used to do a lot of Rubik's cubing, and I used to mention that in my tell me about yourself, and most of the time that everybody used to kind of start from there, asking me that how what all I solve, and how I've learned. So it's good to kind of put things which kind of differentiates you, as well as kind of eases the environment in the interview room. Moving on to the next question. My CV has nothing relevant to SD profile, and I have recently started coding. What is your advice for me? Uh, it would be better to connect offline. I mean, I would like to know what all your coding and what all your aspirations are from non-technical point of view. uh, I mean, they'll ask that they won't ask. I mean, they will ask you that what is your relevance for the role, and maybe you can mention about your coding stuff. But the answers, I mean, it would matter more in the technical side of it, which we aren't covering today. Uh, if we have internet issues while interview, may it affect interviewers' mood? Technically, it shouldn't. I mean, I cannot answer for all interviewers out there. Internet issues are real and it can happen, so that's fine. I mean, you should not worry about that. All those who want to connect with me can connect with me over LinkedIn, which I have shared. So just current that stands for you as well. Moving on, how to defend gap years. I mean, you should be honest about it, whatever the reason is. I mean, it can be due to some kind of preparation you would be doing for some examination, or maybe you have taken a break for some other personal reasons. So whatever that is, it's important to kind of picture the whole scenario, right? If you are sharing that this was your gap year, you should also tell that why you feel that you are now ready to take on to a new challenge, to a new role. Why do you think you want to come back? So it would depend from profile to profile, but the key point will be that uh, apart from sharing that you have taken a gap year, you should be very specific about how the overall scenario was, what your learnings were, why you think you're ready to move on, and things like that, right? So that is very very important. All right, guys. So I guess these are all the questions. You are free to get in touch with me over LinkedIn if you get some more questions, and you can book your sessions on PrepLeaf portal, which I have shared the link in the profile as well. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for your time. Keep safe.